Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another community event for the North American Customer Centricity Awards. We are delighted to have you with us, and happy Friday. Hope that you all, under restrictions, are well and your families are safe. So thank you for spending the time with us on Friday. My name's Marlan Hardie. I think I know most of you, but for those of you that don't, I work for a company called Worldwide Technologies that's in partnership with ARCET Global. And ARCET Global is the company that is founding and supporting all of these WebEx, these community events for the awards. And we appreciate you being here and attending. If it's the first time, welcome again. If you're returning, you know much about the awards, and we're glad to have you with us. So this morning, part of the series that you're hearing this morning is the third session of community awareness for the North American Centricity Awards. But this is our first webinar, so this format is new to all, but we'll have a delightful discussion and engagement this morning. So really the nature behind these events are to create awareness and to build a community of those that are practitioners for customer experience and those that are developing it inside of their companies as well as practicing it in the community. So here's the agenda for today. After we get through just a brief welcome and introduction, we'll jump right into the introduction of the North American Customer Centricity Awards with the founder from ARCET Global, Mark Hamill, who we'll introduce here shortly. And then we're going to have an interactive workshop that's facilitated by Diane Magers, who I think everybody here knows and is a practitioner in the industry, also the former CEO of the CXPA. I'm Marlan Hardie, Chief Customer Officer for Worldwide Technology again. I'd like to just stop here and introduce Mark Hamill, who is our CEO and co-founder for ARCET Global. Mark, welcome, and look forward to your introduction.
Thank you very much, Marlan, and welcome everybody as well. It's a shame that I was not able to make it over. I was supposed to be there in person for this week, but as Marlan said, I hope everyone is safe and well, and hope to meet you all in person at some stage in the very near future. So as a lot of you have already seen a presentation by my business partner, Richard Kennedy, in one of the first community events, I will briefly go through a bit of information about the awards before I pass over to Diane. So just to run you through some quick information, the entry deadline for the awards is 20th of May, and we have a conference and awards ceremony taking place on the 9th of October in Dallas at the Sheraton Dallas Hotel. In terms of the way we run the awards, it's quite different. We have also had our scoring model endorsed by a red brick university, as they're called in the UK, in University of Chester Business School. And this is on the basis that 50% of the scoring is on a written submission document, which is 2,000 words. And then also we have 40% of based on presentation, and then 10% of that is also an amalgamation of those two. So a score out of 100 at the end of that. To give you an idea, all of our judges are independent of ARCET Global. So each of them chooses a category and has 5 to 10 entries to score. But having independent specialist judges adds a huge deal of credibility to the program as well, and makes it much fairer for all involved. There are 22 categories to choose from, so it's not just customer experience, but also digital and employee experience. So if there are any projects, initiatives, or campaigns that you and your company have been working on, there's a whole host of opportunities and options available to you to get involved. Now, this is probably the bit that makes it quite different from any awards program that perhaps you've been involved in previously, in that every single company that participates in the awards and is lucky enough to be listed as a finalist, they get the opportunity to present their business case to the panels of judges. And also you can go and watch other competitors in the same category that you're in or in other categories. So there'll be over 100 live case studies presented on the day of the 9th of October. And we're already on 90 entries And there's some household names that are involved, such as Citibank, Blue Cross Blue Shield, 7-Eleven, that are already participating in these awards. As in terms of the conference, we have some very prominent CX professionals and specialists from a range of industries, so not just consultants that are specialists in their fields, but also practitioners in their organizations. And a conference panel which includes Diane, is part of that conference as well. And at the end of all of the process, you would receive a benchmark feedback report against to see where you fit versus your competition. And just as a brief thing before I close off about the awards, there's also an online customer experience masterclass which is taking place on June 22nd and 23rd, which involves Diane and Ian Golding. So if there are any questions, or if you have any feedback or anything at all, please feel free to get in touch with me. I unfortunately still have my UAE number. I used to live in Dubai, and my UAE number is my WhatsApp number, but my Texas number is listed here, and my email. So please feel free to get in touch. And the video from today's session will be emailed to everybody, and we will also list this on our YouTube channel after the event. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Diane Magers, who will take you forward and run you through today's activities. So thank you very much, Diane, and welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. So it's a pleasure to have all of you here today. And as I'm going to give the caveat everybody gives to, we all are working from home. So, and this is new for us too. So kind of bear with us as we learn, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation today and some nice takeaways. So let's get started a little bit. I want to walk through just talking about what we're going to accomplish today and a little bit about how it's going to work. So we're going to talk briefly through what are insights and actions and why it's such a challenge. And then we're going to alternate between introducing a technique to develop insights, and we'll go over to the Mural. So if you have not received the Mural link, it's in the chat. So you can click on that and go to Mural. You'll just have to do a quick sign in, and that will allow us to actually all collaborate online. Mural is an online collaboration tool. So part of this webinar, if you haven't used an online collaboration tool, this will give you an opportunity to try one out and to see the power of them. It's definitely something that a lot of people, as we work remotely, are using. So we thought we'd give you a chance to do that. If you have any issues, please text in the chat or in the Q&A. If you can't get into Mural, or if you end up not being able to, we're able to put stickies you'll see on the Mural board there for you. So just let us know if you're having any difficulties or issues, and we'll make sure we get you hooked up. So let's talk a little bit about why we're here today. The topic that I'm going to kind of introduce here is really insights to action. What I find most interesting for most experienced practitioners is they have a ton of data and they have an organization that they're driving to make change. But what really is happening is a lot of organizations get a little paralysis when they look at all the data that's coming in and they're not quite sure what to do with it if they have the right insight, and then taking that insight to action and making it the right action. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is how to begin to talk about insights to action and where that needs to head. So sorry, just a second, I'll swap this out. This is where okay. So let me just hide there we go. So let's talk a little bit about just insights to action generally as a concept, and that will set the stage for our online. So we find that data is really directional, right? You can look at a lot of charts and graphs, but it's really finding, what's the human being experience behind that? How do I really look at the needs and the why things are happening? So usually charts and graphs are lagging indicators, which don't really tell us. They tell us what happened, but it doesn't tell us why it happened. So part of insights is finding the why behind what's going on. Big data, in the study that was recently done in 2018 around big data, was that many companies feel like there's too much emphasis on quantitative evidence when making decisions. And 75% have trouble explaining the customer's attitudes or behaviors found in surveys or analytics. So this whole why question continues to come up. So the ability for you to explore and develop insights is important. So if I say the word insights, it's kind of like digital transformation. Everybody has a little bit different opinion. We look at an insight today as really a revelation that produces great work. There's some degree of, hey, I never thought of it like that, where we're really looking for true insights and those light bulb moments. Now, you'll probably get a lot of different opinions as you talk about this. So like Britannica says, insights occur when people recognize relationships or make associations between objects and actions that can help them solve new problems. So it's really about how do we take what we know and try to pull it together with things that are really going to generate a difference about the objects and actions or the human being. But if you go to a lot of people in your organization, for example, you may find that they'll give you a definition. So one of the first key takeaways and things to go do is to really define what insights means for your organization. It's not just data, and it's definitely not just actions. It might be things like you've got key drivers of behavior or key drivers of experience. Those aren't really insights. They do tell you some things, but they're not actionable. So ask around and find out how people are defining it. And you can see here, there's all different things. Just when I asked some peers of mine what was happening. So that's the first thing, is really define it. Ask around and get consensus around what we mean when we say insight, so we know where we're headed. Insights, regardless of how you define them, are about caring for the human experience, the emotions and needs. So this picture of the coffee maker, it's great to have all the functionality of a coffee maker, but it's what is really the human experience behind that? What is the human being trying to accomplish? And we all know that first sip of coffee is like the best. So this is part of getting you to think a little bit differently about not just the functionality, but also the emotional experience, because we're going to pull that into some of the insights that we're going to generate today. So getting data isn't the problem. We've got data all over. There's a whole universe of data out there where I think you can see, hang on, I get to chat. I think you can see that anywhere that you go, you can get a ton of data, all kinds of data, qualitative, social, from employees, market trends. So being a little bit overwhelmed, even if you get the data in one place or you have a way to look at it, it's still about what do you do with it. So ideas are easy. It's getting to the right idea that is challenging. And that's where this light bulb moment comes in. That's what an insight and design strategy is. It's this human-centered, multidisciplinary approach to getting to the right idea from which an experience can be designed. So it's also about action impact. So it's great to have even the right idea, but if you're not designing the experience intentionally, then you're really just finding one more thing to go fix, right? Find and fix, we call it. So because it's not business is unusual, I call it today, it's hard to get people together. So the online tool we're going to use and the techniques can be leveraged regardless of whether you're in person or not. Of course, it's much better to do it in person where you have all those great side conversations, but let's merge and try to figure out what we do in the world today, the not normal. Many organizations have a lot of data and brand objectives, and they kind of go right to build. And so what we're suggesting is experience-led organizations really put between finding the data and having these objectives. They go through a design phase. They're really discovering and envisioning. And that's really about what insight generation is. It's finding from that human perspective before we design that right idea. So it does belong in the design realm. And there's lots of different techniques you can use. You can see some here, and we're going to do the what, why, how laddering in our exercise today. But there's a ton out there if you go to IDEO or any of the other organizations that provide design thinking skill sets or experience design. You can search on either of those to really find what are some of the tools and techniques I can have in my toolbox that will help me move my organization forward. So the steps to being more insightful is really about asking more thoughtful questions. And I'm going to give you some examples of these. It's about shifting your perspective, kind of looking beyond the obvious, and then not being afraid to reframe the problem. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of those and kind of see how they come into practice as we walk through our exercises. So here's the question asking, if I were, for example, to ask you to design a vase, you might think about something like this, a very typical kind of cylinder with a wider bottom, typically that would hold flowers. this is very product or task focused, and it really doesn't stretch our imagination as much as if we ask the question, design a better way for people to enjoy flowers in their home. So that's really what emotionally, the job to be done, the activity that is we're trying to accomplish. A vase is one way to do that. But if I think about really being experience focused, I ask a question in a different way. So this is an example of what comes to mind if you ask people different questions. It's not the kind of standard. So this is where insights and innovation really come from, is asking the right question, asking it in a different way that really helps people think about the experience. Disney is the same way. So Disney does the same thing. And, you know, they ask, how can we make the wait line shorter, was what they kept getting the feedback from their customers. Hey, the waits are too long. They framed it another way and said, how can we make waiting in line more entertaining so people actually look forward to standing in line? Now that's a very ambitious question, but they did find lots of ways to put these interactive sessions in the line so that people were entertained and learning and building up to what they were going to experience on the ride. So again, shifting the question, just reframing the problem or opportunity when you look at the insights to really get people to start thinking differently. So let's talk about this, and this is going to be our first exercise. We're going to do something pretty simple, so we start to use Mural. It'll make sense. This insight to action technique, it's kind of targeting the end game, I call it. It's called the victory circle, and it's really a pretty easy technique. You can very quickly draw a big circle on anything, but what it helps us do is shift the perspective. We get to think about the future state, and that helps us to not really solution, but really think about what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What does that end goal look like? So we start to think about how, like Disney, how we're really gonna change our perspective. So here's the exercise before we flip over to Mural of envisioning the future. And we're going to talk about employees working at home. Let's take something that we're all probably struggling with as experienced professionals. You know, how do we care for the employee, their human being, while we all work from home? So the exercise is broadly envisioning what an experience will look like, exploring new and radical ways to create a target experience. We're not solutioning, we're just envisioning what the end state would be like for the customer or the employee. So here's where we're going to exit out a little bit of this. I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to go to the the Mural, in case you're not there. So give me 2 seconds to find my Mural. So I see that a lot of you are already in Mural. That's great. You should be, let me just share my screen. And you'll be able to actually see on the screen as well. So if you don't have 2 screens, you can probably shut this one off because you're going to be able to see what's on. But for those of you who may be struggling or aren't online and are listening just to the webinar. So this is what we call a mural board. And so I've simply put on it, think about it like a big whiteboard. What we're doing here is we've got 3 exercises we're going to do today. We've got victory circle, we're going to do the what, why, how lettering, and we're going to do brainstorming with a twist. So the way that this works is actually pretty simple, and we won't use a lot of the functionality that we potentially can. This does have a lot of functionality, but I'm going to zoom in on the victory circle. And the easiest way to do this is I'm going to ask you to say, what does victory look like? What does success look like if we think about employees working from home, both functional and emotional? So the way to work together here is you go over to this, see this sticky note? You can click on this. And you can simply take one of these, just click on the pink sticky and pull it over here and then type. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Yep, so pull over one, and I said, I would love the employees to feel cared for. So go ahead and go over here and just drag and drop a sticky on and just type. Once you drop it, you can just type. Great. We'll also export all of this so you get the results of what your work that you're doing here today with everyone. Now, when we're on, if we weren't muted because of all the at-home things that are going on, you can actually do this just like we're doing here today and have people actually be shouting out what they're talking about as they go through it. There we go. Great. You can resize it if you need more room, or it should automatically size. You can make the font bigger, just like any other thing. Great. There you go, guys. Just give it a try. Just click on a sticky and drop it over. Great, you guys are doing great. This is an awesome way if you haven't used a tool like this. There's several out there in the market. There's Mural, M-U-R-A-L, like this one. There's Miro, M-I-R-O. And then Lucid Chart, if you've used that before, it's typically been a process design tool. They've actually added a whole bunch of templates around experience and design. So if you're interested in looking at any of those, all of them have a free trial right now. So it's a good time to try it out and do simple things like these exercises with your team. Great, you guys are doing great. Perfect. Richard, do we have any questions on the chat?
Just one from Janelle, which was, what was the last one that you mentioned?
Oh, yes, Lucid Chart, L-U-C-I-D-C-H-A-R-T. Perfect. Now, the nice thing about these platforms as well is as long as somebody has access to it and you leave the access open for them, you can set up teams. They can go in and work on this on their own time. You don't have to be online and be working all together. Everybody can work on it individually. And it saves automatically. So there's no issue with really trying to say, is somebody saving over my work, because it's really live. And all of the platforms are like that. You can turn off access for folks to say, I'm going to lock it down. You can turn off access. So it really has a lot of good functionality to allow collaboration to happen. This also works well, not just in our work from home mode that we're in now, but if you have a global company, this is a great way for people to be part of a session. So for example, at one organization, we did a workshop and we had both the physical workshop, but then we had this going on the screen so that we can actually see it kind of duplicated. We could see the virtual session going on, and we included those two things together. So we allowed people to work together who weren't able to be there, and also people in the room, but it felt very jointed. So it's also a good way to bring people globally to save costs, but also if they just can't make it. We always know that's an opportunity. Great.
One more question, Diane. Lucid Chart and Mural, does it have the same relationship in terms of data?
Yes, they do. They have a little bit of different functionality between, and depending on the license, there are different licenses. Like Mural, I think it starts out at like $15 a month. But if you need to do more, if you need more time, if you need more management of the roles and the teams, there's different subscriptions, I guess I should say, about what you can do and how you manage this from an enterprise standpoint. You can create teams, you can create individual workspaces. There's lots of options. Great. Okay. Anything else? Employees working from home. We'll give it another minute. If there's anything else you're talking about. So this is interesting, right? So the nice thing about doing this is as we begin to really look at these pieces, now we kind of have a target. So when we start to ask questions, we have some things that will really tease it out. So for example, what makes an employee feel safe? Or what makes an employee feel energized? What are some of the things that we could create that really will bring more energy to our day? So it helps you begin to pose the questions as you go through design to say, well, if that's what we're intending to do, then what are the things that I can do and we can do as an organization to create that emotional engagement. And then the functional pieces just as well. How do we make sure people have access to good tech? What do we need to understand? What are some of the ideas we have about tech and what's currently used? So this is a great example of different technologies that can come into play to help enable what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so you can keep working. I'm going to stop sharing and move on to our next exercise. We go back to the PowerPoint. Sorry for the back and forth. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about problem statements. So we won't do this exercise because it's one that as you dig in, it's a great way to really frame the problem or the opportunity from the customer's perspective. So let's say you have, like for hotels, for example, the #1 driver for hotels of dissatisfaction is standing in line. So one of the things that you could do is kind of reframe that problem from the customer's perspective to begin to get to insights. So what this looks like is thinking about a problem well formulated is half solved. So if you can really nail down that problem, you're halfway there. It influences the type of solutions you come up with. So if you define the problem in a certain way, like the vase and designing how people can arrange their flowers, you'll see that there's lots of different types of solutions. It also challenges the assumptions. By looking at it from the customer's perspective, we're challenging what we know to be true, and it helps us really express the problem in forms of human behavior. That helps us understand what the human being is trying to accomplish, like the standing in line at Disney. So there's a lot of different frameworks for this. So one way is pretty simple here. It's just to use this statement in the orange of X needs a way to, and then you talk about the action, so that you talk about then what the user is trying to fulfill. So here's a short example. Liz needs a way to reduce redundancy in her work so that she can save time. So we've made the problem statement really about how Liz, what she needs to do and what she's trying to accomplish. So as we design, the insight can really be helpful to say, well, is that insight going to solve her need, her opportunity? You can also do a little bit more exploration on a problem statement where you continue kind of build out all the things that are components of what she needs and why she's running into opportunity. So these are just 2 short ones, but imagine if you continue to build on this, you'd kind of be halfway there to talk about, it sounds like she's filling in the same information. That's obviously not very efficient. How can we solve that? So the more you break down the problem and frame it from a different perspective, can help you get to the solution. Or this is one that's also used for problem statements. And here you just have these, I am, the customer's name, and what they're doing, trying to, what they're attempting to accomplish, but what's standing in the way, because they're not able to get the benefit. So you can read through this and just say, it's kind of just a way to, again, reframe from the customer's perspective what the needs are and what they want to see happen. Again, it helps you target what the insight and the action should be generating. It's also about the art of the possible then. If we got to the right action, we come up with the great insights and ideas, and we put it into, if we were, as a brand, were to, and we describe the solution, it impacts how many customers or employees. Will what we do in that new behavior result in different solutions for the customer? And then what's the financial impact of that? So it's kind of that insight to action and saying, if we do this, here's the things that we're going to result from both the customer's perspective as well as the brand.
Hey, Diane, Marlan here. Just quickly, I don't think you're sharing, and there's a couple of questions.
Oh, no. Sorry. I'm going to go right back through that, guys. Give me 2 seconds.
No worries.
Okay.
Thanks, Diane.
Yes. Thanks for that heads up. Let's see if I can this is where we get into a little bit of there. Share. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. And I'll run through those quickly again so that you can actually see them. And it'll be in the recording if we didn't do that. All right, so can you see now?
We can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this is what I was referring to. So now you can get the visuals behind what I was sharing. So reframing the problem, this is where we talked about the needs, and here's the example. So I'll give you just a second to view that. Customer needs a way, write the action so that write the benefit of what they're trying to achieve. So you can see that by writing it out, you can kind of drill down into what's really happening. And then here's the template for what the customer is trying to accomplish. Again, just rewriting what the customer is trying to accomplish, how it makes them feel, and what they need from you. And then on the other side, the art of the possible. What will this action, if we have this insight and we identify an action, what are the things that will happen, and what's the result for the customer and the brand? So that's that part of it. Now I'm going to introduce you to another technique that we're going to go back to the Mural board and do. And if you're on the Mural board, you can take a look at this. It's called what, why, how, what laddering. It's a technique to identify multiple causes and solutions to opportunities. So this is a way to generate additional insights, many insights, and then pick the right one that you want to accomplish. So I always like to give examples. So this is an example from Hardie. If you all know Hardie, they insure antique and classic cars. And their employees are affectionately called gearheads because they hire people who are passionate about antique and classic cars. And so when we worked with them, one of the insights that they had from their feedback and their data told them that renewing the contract for their clients was confusing. And so that was what their issue was. So this is what is happening? What is the issue that they're dealing with? And you can see here, we've kind of broken down, think of this as taking a big rock and breaking it down into smaller pieces. You can see that we actually have, and this is just a much smaller version of all the things they came up with. We actually had an entire wall filled with ideas. But what we did is we said, well, what is the issue? And so things like instructions aren't easy to find, or I haven't been told how to renew. Multiple people are involved. There's too many handoffs. The instructions are too complex. So this is the why piece. Why is that happening? So they came up with a whole bunch of ideas. And then we started for each one of those. You can see the light blue line there. I haven't been told how to renew. And we broke that down. Well, how could we fix this issue? So this was, again, just generate as many ideas as you can. We can send instructions before the renewal, or we can provide renewal training, or include salespeople in the renewal process. And then the next stage is to say, well, let's take each one of those and break it down into what actions can we take. And so this is a good way to take those overwhelming drivers and sub-drivers and really start to break them down into what's happening. So that's the exercise. Here's the technique. The technique is to identify needs that are both meaningful and actionable. Using this when you have multiple causes or solutions to opportunities, which most do, it helps us discover both meaning of what's happening and an action. So we're going to select an opportunity, and we're going to use the challenge today of it's difficult to turn data to insights and into action. So we're going to take the actual topic of today and work on those whys. We're going to create a matrix of whys, and there's no limit or restrictions on the number of options. And also think about the 5 why technique. So I say this is my 2-year-old exercise. Just continue to ask the question why. The more you build out this information, continue to ask why, and you'll continue to get deeper into root cause. So that's the exercise we're going to do now, and I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the mural. So you should be on there already. Escape here and go back to my mural. Okay, share again. Let's see. I think I lost. Sorry, y'all, we'll get there. Screen. Okay, you should be able to see the, and again, and it looks like most of you are still in there. So let's take, we're focused on the what, why, how laddering as our exercise. And this is the what. Okay, you have your challenge here. It's a challenge to convert data to insights. And we're going to start with the why. So if you'll go back over to your sticky notes and just pull over a why. Why is it a challenge to convert data to insights at your brand? And just start adding the whys. There we go. Great. Okay, great. You can see what happens a little bit in a facilitation session like this is people kind of have all these ideas that come off the top of their head. And I encourage you to talk about this wave so you can see there's not a lot of people adding new stickies. It's always a good time to really ask another question. So you've developed a lot of question sets, you know, in your future state design, if you were doing your victory circle, to kind of tease out a little bit more. So I call this kind of a wave. Think about waves from an ocean. People immediately dump a lot of information, but sometimes they need a little bit of probing to get to what's next. So, and then ask yourself as you're doing this, kind of what are the themes? So you can see, if you go to chat, just put in, what do you see as some of the themes? If you can zoom out on this, if you look over here on the screen, you can zoom out. Just zoom out and take a look at what everybody else has added. It might stimulate some additional thoughts, or look for what do we think the themes are. Looks like this too much data, over-rotating on quantitative or measures, don't have the confidence or skills, more priority to speed to market than on quality. There's definitely some issues here. moving too fast. Yep, you can see and there's another technique called affinity clustering, where you can actually take these, much like Dave. I think you're looking at, he's doing it organically. Dave, you're kind of collecting and putting those into those themes, which is great. That's the other thing you can do here, is kind of move them around and highlight the ones you want to focus on. People use data to support opinions, okay? All right. So let's move on to the how. So one of the things that we want to do for this exercise, now in a regular exercise like this, you would take each one of these, either detailed or the themes, and start to say, well, how could we fix this? So for us to really practice this well, let's focus on one thing. So if you all will do a little bit of voting here, and you can see there's a voting session here at the top, you can actually just start a voting session, and to say, to have people actually vote on it. So we will, you can actually see which ones, how many you're voting on, so you can see my screen. We won't actually do that where we are, but what we'll do is, oops, not gonna get out of this. Uh-oh, I'm stuck. I think I've frozen, there we go. We're gonna, so you can actually vote, have the people vote on them and give them an opportunity. What we're going to do now, though, is let's take one and really break it down into the how. So what I want to start with, I think, is, let's see if we look at some of these. What's one we can break down? Not enough people understand what to do with the data. So that's probably a really good one to start to highlight. So this one here, let's take this one and put it under our why. This is what we're going to work on. So now, if not enough people understand what to do with the data, how could we solve this problem? So now I'd like you to take your yellow stickies and say, pull those over under the how. Okay, there we go. And begin to come up with, how could we solve this problem? So this could be like, I might add, develop new skills. So teaching people things, exercises like this. What are the other hows? How could we solve this problem? Not enough people understand what to do with the data. There we go. So empower people. How would we empower them? Keep asking the why questions. Why would we empower them? What could that look like? If I had to put it into action, if I'm going to put it into action, how could we do that? Great, Renata, thank you. That's great. Training people, good. Someone went away. You might be experiencing a little bit of a lag, but it's fine. It's still being saved and it'll catch up with you. That's great. Setting up goals that consider production time. Excellent. Reduce approval requirements. Good. Create playbooks. That's awesome. Good. You guys are doing excellent. All right. Excellent. Find ways to be open-minded. Good. All right. Good. Okay, so we've made some really good progress on the hows. Now, you could do this same how. If you think about the example that I gave you, you could take each one of the whys and break those down into different hows. Because that then becomes more about, there's a lot of options you're going to have. And the best thing about that is you've got lots of things to choose from. So you can kind of go into it with, here's some recommendations the organization has in different ways. Some of them might be like we see here, some of them might be training. Some of them might be a skill set that you want to hire. Some might be the process that you're going to improve. So you can see that they tend to run in themes as well, but getting down to very specifics. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take the action. So now we're going to say, well, that's great. This is how we want to empower people, training everyone, work with the data. If we're going to do that, what's an action that we could take around that? So take this one that I have highlighted, I'm circling right here, and put that into action. What exactly is it we'd go do? So a good technique here is to start with a verb or an action, a verb within the action plan. So it could be, you know, hire an expert in design thinking, or go take a training class and become a trainer in insight generation techniques. So I'll give you a little bit of time to use your orange stickies and convert that one, empower people with training, into action. What are the steps that you would take? What are some of the ideas you have around how could we action around that? Perfect. Great. Good. Very specific actions. Excellent. Yeah, publish weekly how to use data e-newsletters. Awesome. Create a course structure. Good. All right, let's take a couple more minutes. As many as you can. I always say that the size of the prize is how many stickies you can use. Get in touch with other companies to see what they're doing. That's excellent. Bring in those best practices. What can highly leverage somebody else's ideas, as I say. Good. Let's see, let's blow this one up a little bit. Allow time for strategy and analysis. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Recurring classes. Acquire third-party training for hypo leaders. Excellent. That's the who, what, when, and where. That's good. Focus groups, always excellent. Getting a focus group together and using some of these techniques to have them help. You guys are great at this. Wonderful. Okay, so let's, I'm going to stop sharing this and go back to our next series and the set in the opportunities. So let me share this. Okay. All right, so let's think a little bit about the next exercise. You guys did a great, and you can see that if the more you dig into that, and with any of these techniques, insights can come in all sizes. It doesn't have to be something, it can be something that's completely disruptive, like when Uber, they use design thinking to come up with how could we disrupt the taxi industry. It can be very small things too that can make a really big impact. So the great thing about insights is don't get rid of any idea, because you never know what it's going to provide. And one of the other ways that we do kind of brainstorming with a twist, I call it, is a lot of times when you're brainstorming, it's kind of still in that very functional mode, much like the vase and the flower arrangement exercise that I showed you, really allowing people to dream. And this is where brainstorming with the twist really comes into play. We're going to go back and do this exercise with the employees working from home, because I think it would be too hard for the brainstorming. We've already done the how on what to do with insights, but let's go back to the theme of employees working from home and do brainstorming with the twist. Now, the great thing about this is you can just say, what are some ideas you have around getting employees to work from home, and then the success and the victory circle we did will help us kind of target what can I do to get there. But the twist is, if time, money, and effort were no object, what would you do? So this allows you to really take off the reins and let people really think about that disruptive, we could do anything, if time, money, and effort were no object. And while it may seem a little bit crazy and you have to come back to reality at some point, oftentimes the ideas can be converted to something that is manageable, achievable, and feasible, even in steps or stages. You might not be able to get to the crazy idea, but there's probably some things, if you break them down, like using the insight technique we just learned, to really come up with different t-shirt sizes of things that you could go do. So we're going to go back now to our mural board. So let me go back and share the screen again. And we'll go back to the mural board. And great, you guys are still broken that out. That's awesome. We're going to go down here, and for brainstorming, it is essentially just, you can use whatever color sticky you want. We're going to brainstorm with a twist. We want to really look at, you can go up here, drag, and kind of look at all the ideas you have around functional and emotional, and come back down here and just use a sticky note and say, what are the ideas we have? Time, money, and effort are no object. What are some of the things that you could do to enable and engage employees at home, both functional and emotional? Pick whichever side. I love that. Buy green screens and studio lights for everyone, so they can feel comfortable on camera. Awesome. That's a great one. Good. Thank you for that. What ideas? If you were the CEO, what would you do if you had unlimited money and time? What would you do for your employees in this time frame? Take a look up at the top of the victory circle. If you're needing some inspiration, take each of those and come up with, well, what's the solution? How could I solve that? Oh, I like that. Send kiddo care packages. It's awesome. Send them money to set up their home office. Go to a 4-day work week to support parents balancing teaching and working. Create a Hollywood Walk of Fame for the company video all-stars. These are great. Super creative, guys. Co-working space account. I love that. A virtual space you can use to recreate the office feel. That's cool. Incentives. 2 time a month in-office meetups post-COVID. I like this one. Leaders model work-life boundaries. Meditation Mondays. Great. Pay their internet bill. That's great. Reimbursement. That's caring for them functionally, financially. That's awesome. Summer family fun days on Fridays, video call. Yeah, a lot of connection here. You can see the themes that are coming out of this piece as well. Let's see down here, we have make an office and provide personal gym classes for everyone. Yep, I love that. I just took a virtual yoga class. It was a lot of fun. Everybody was on camera, and it was great to just to talk to people while we were in between our sessions. Good stuff. Flexible spending accounts to use on sale. Awesome. Create a corporate office coffee brand and send them coffee each month. This is great. This is fun. See, it allows you to take the reins off a little bit and just think about it. Now, while you might not be able to do some of them, you can break them down into small steps, as we said. Virtual happy hours. Good. Create walk and talk groups. Janelle, you say this is why I love design thinking. Yes, it's so much fun. You get a lot of great ideas. Some of these aren't hard to do, and they're the t-shirt sizes. I say if you can actually put these in, extra small to extra large, you can kind of come up with some options. The great thing about that is if you're able to go to executives with a kind of laundry list of things that you could do, where they could invest a little bit or invest a lot. Let them find the things that really resonate for them. So it gives you a lot of different options to go to, rather than just one thing. Let them pick from certain things. Offer standing desk and office chair reimbursements. That's awesome. Let's go here a little bit. Start week off with weekly video like a huddle focused on the value of the week. Create virtual happy hours with water cooler talk. Leadership video messaging weekly. Great. Perfect. You guys are naturals at this. All right, so I'm going to leave this up if you continue to have ideas. And again, we will take all of this and we will publish. The great thing about Mural is you can actually export it into different formats. So if I want to convert this whole thing to publish it, I can put it in, I can take JIRA issues. I can put it in a PDF. So we'll clean it up and we'll send it out to everyone so you have a good start and an example of what we've done here. So nice work, everybody. Some really, really cool ideas. All right. So we're going to go back to our screen and we'll talk a little bit about what's next and how to continue to move things along. So get to the right one. All right. Would you please confirm, Marlan or Richard, where you can see my screen again, the brainstorming with the quiz?
We can. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, so let's take a little bit of summary and action, and then we want to get to some discussion and answer some questions if you have any, or talk a little bit about what you've learned today. So an insight in design a strategy can help you take a more proactive and impactful approach. Rather than thinking about the finding and fixing, the whack-a-mole I call it, this really helps you get to root cause, but it also gives you those insights to be able to design proactively and intentionally, and really embedding this across the organization. So it's one thing for us to learn, but these are great things to teach other teams so they have techniques and a little bit of things in their toolbox in order to get to the right insights too. Many organizations push information out, but they don't really give the organization a way to get to the right insights and design the right opportunities. Keep reframing things you see every day. One thing to really begin to have this different mindset around what you're seeing is how you can actually take what's happening every day, much like that base example I shared with you. Ask different questions. Think about it from a different perspective. Think about this like this is a 2D to 3D. How can we really take those things and make them different? So just keep reframing and re-asking different ways to ask questions. It'll help you practice ways that you can start to ask questions differently. Sorry. Keep connecting different things you see at any time. So the other piece there is asking the right question, but also there's techniques like creative matrix where you take a table and you literally have things down one side and across the top, and you, for every box on that matrix, you simply come up with new ideas. So it's making those connections, as we heard in the Britannica, of looking at the relationships and saying, how could these two things work together, for example? So another way to get to great insights, because that's really where those aha moments kind of come into play. And really think about this as a new skill, not only for yourself, but also for your organization. You're building competencies and capabilities that will really help your organization move forward. I think we saw a lot around the time frame and making decisions, and people are only using quantitative. They're not using the human element. Those are skills. So think about them and be purposeful about what you do and how you're going to bring them together. This is where that qualitative piece, if you remember at the beginning, many organizations feel like they only use quantitative numbers to move forward. So how are you going to bring that human in? So these exercises are all about what the customer needs are, the reframing, the insights, the victory circle, really target what's happening and how the human being, what they need you to do as a brand. There's some insights that are often kind of confused with new information. So I've given you a list here of some ways to really think about interpreting information into human needs. So how do you know? If you bump up against what you're developing, whether it's data or really an insight, these are just some questions to ask. Does your solution trigger an emotional response and a sense of excitement when you come up with an idea? Does it have a multitude of new opportunities and lead to new thoughts and ideas of what could be? Does it make sense, intuitive sense, and provide clarity that was previously missing? So these are some questions to ask yourselves around whether you're just creating more data and action or whether you're truly getting to insights. So a little bit of an acid test. I thought I'd give you some ways to kind of check and balance whether you're heading to insights. So what can you do next? Go find some more insight exercises. There are plenty on IDEO, Luma Institute, LUMA is another one. There's plenty of places you can go to get these techniques, and you'll see in all of the Mural, and Lucidchart, they actually have templates of these things that are already set up that you can use and simply pull them down. They even give you instructions in a couple of the platforms, steps to take to facilitate. So you can build these skills on your own with, get a friendly, get your team together and walk through them, and then start to use them with the organization. Create a definition of insights for yourself and a plan. So what? So a lot of times when people say, well, we have a lot of this data and we don't really know how to get there, even when they do, I kind of say, so what? You know, what are you going to do to get it to action? It's great that you have that insight. What are you going to do to intentionally design it? And then look at your feedback for expressed and unexpressed needs. If you're going to reframe an opportunity or you're going to create insights, you really need to make sure that it's meeting a need that your customers or employees are expressing, or even something they didn't know that they needed. So look for that feedback for all of those needs, because that's where you're really your basis for the insight, as well as when you get to action, how do you know you're meeting that need? Uh-oh. Am I sharing the wrong screen again? Dave,
No, it looks fine.
you're saying okay.
It's just if you swap displays, Diane, because we can see both the views in the full screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Is that full screen? Richard, is that full screen now?
That's
It is.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I moved my mouse somewhere else. Okay. So now you can probably see them better. So these are the three things I ask for you to do. Go try those insight techniques, create a plan of what you're going to do, how you're going to embed this in your organization, and then really go look for those needs. So questions and discussions, my email is here, my phone number. I'm happy to answer any questions offline if you'd like, but if you want to open up the mic, we'll start to ask questions or discussion, or if you'd like to and don't really want to talk today, or you've got a dog barking in the background, you can certainly go to chat, or you can use the Q&A. Richard, I'll turn it over to you and we'll open it up for questions and discussion.
Great. We'll just give it a minute and to see if there's any questions. All right. Well, if there are questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Diane directly, or to Mark, or to Richard. Diane, really great working session. Thank you so much for walking us through that, and thank you very much to those that participated. Hopefully, that was super helpful to you, and we look forward to doing more together.
So remember the question from Rox there.
Hey, Diane.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning to all. Do you feel that there are significant different approaches needed for different industries to help extract some of the valuable information that you need?
You know, I've used these techniques for years, and it really is more about the right tool. I think your, if you were doing patient experience versus customer needs, there really isn't much difference between them. There might be some tweaks that you would do to kind of use the different language, but I've used tools like this in almost many, many different verticals. So I don't really think the tools need to change. It's probably just more the context.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. How many of you, just by chance, either by chat, how many of you have used an online collaboration tool before? Yep, so Janelle has, Sean, yep. Yep, it's great, good. Well, I hope there's some new tools here about how to kind of facilitate and how to think about using a tool. I always say sometimes a tool doesn't really do anything until you put the instruction around it. Good, okay, Isuk, you're brand new to it. Envision freehand, okay, Ahmed, we might have given you a couple of new things to think about, or different platforms. All of them have their own benefits. Great, Janelle, frameworks were new for you. And some of those, like the Victory Circle and the Brainstorm with a Twist, are not in any of the templates, but you can also create your own templates. In each of the platforms, you can do that. So if you want to create your own version of a journey map, or the Victory Circle, for example, isn't in any of them, you can create your own template and reuse it and save. Yeah, Microsoft Office whiteboard in the comments if you guys are watching the chat. There is a whiteboard functionality, but it doesn't have nearly the richness, especially with the templates. It saves you a ton of time to have those templates already in there. And once you pull in a template, you can actually break it up and modify it if it doesn't fit your needs. And then it also gives you some great ideas and really a toolkit that's kind of ready to go. Yeah. Microsoft Teams can plug in many apps like Mural to have it in there. That's great. Good to know. Good to know that interface. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, Marla, for next steps, and we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up next in addition to the awards. We also want to maybe get an idea of what they want to see on the next topics. So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind, before you leave, what are some of the other topics that you'd like to hear about from our group? We'd love to put another community event on the calendar, and we want to know what you want to discuss and what you want to understand topic-wise. And if any of you would like to volunteer ideas or topics, we'd love to have you volunteer to help contribute to one of our online events.
Yep, that's a great transition, Diane, and thanks again for leading that session. Absolutely. Please put in what challenges you're facing in your practice in the chat. Let's capture those. Our next session will be announced shortly for May. Today's session was really an interactive session and workshop. Our next session is going to focus on the issues that you put in the chat, so please contribute there. And we're going to focus kind of in a relaxed virtual coffee break format. We wish we could be together, but if conditions are still restricted, then in May we'll join you here on Zoom again. And really just kind of have an interactive session discussing best practices and the challenges that you're facing. To Diane's point, also remember the awards event is fast approaching, so please look for communications from Mark and Richard and those interests. If you have questions, please reach out. It would be our pleasure to have you at that event. So thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being part of the community event, and we hope that you have a safe and happy weekend. Look forward to talking to you soon. Mark?
Yeah, just echo that. Thank you very much, Marlan. Really appreciate that. And Diane, that was fantastic. So anyone, if anything springs to mind afterwards in terms of the topics for our next coffee break or coffee morning, whatever we want to call it, community event, please feel free to reach out to us, and we would certainly take all those suggestions on board, and we will announce the date with the email that follows up with this. So thank you very much once again for attending, and thanks to everybody who's involved.